thank you for having us today. It's always a pleasure, and we were just chatting that you are one of the only analysts that have been in the uranium space through thick and thin, and now that uranium's doing better, hopefully that's coming home to roost a little bit. Latitude Uranium, we just renamed it from Labrador this year, reflecting the purchase of an Angelac. In terms of investment highlights, we think we're in the right area, which is uranium. We've got two great assets in great jurisdictions, both in Canada, and the right people to move it forward. I mean, when you look at uranium, I realize that it's sort of a uranium panel today. We'll have a little look about what our views in terms of what the deficits are, and uranium as a fuel source. Both of our assets both have historical resources on them. There's 43 million pounds historical at Angelac, which is in Nunavut, and over at the CNB, which stands for Central Mineral Belt, in Labrador, we've got 14 million pounds, and as everybody knows, Canada, Nunavut, and Newfoundland, both provincially and federally, always fairly highly ranked, which is terrific in this world that we live in today. And in terms of the people, both in terms of uranium and mining experience, fairly deep, both at the board level and the management and geological level, and we'll delve into that a bit. In terms of this is our pitch for why nuclear. I mean, people look at supply demand and all the fundamental reasons, nuclear restarts, things like that. But when you take, from my perspective, when you take a little bit of a step back, the simple fact is the world needs energy. And unless you think that we're going to sort of go back to the rationing energy sort of medieval times, I mean, you look at, this is on a global basis, this is for the entire world, about where energy comes from and where it gets used. And you look at the 1 through 3, that's oil, coal, and gas, the so-called carbon emitters. And you've got the 5 through 6 at the bottom, nuclear, hydro, and other renewables. And you look at how small nuclear, hydro, and other is of the global source, and the three big buckets where energy gets used, heating, transportation, and the biggest one's electricity generation. We're all very, I'm not sure people always realize this, we're very fortunate in Toronto and Ontario. 2/3 of our power here comes from nuclear and 1/3 from hydro. We don't experience brownouts. Prices, people may argue they're a little up, but they're very reasonable in world standards. So we're very fortunate. So I'm not sure people quite realize that the green energy in today's world is a fairly small portion. And when you think about all these net zero goals that governments and various NGOs have, all very laudable, but when you start thinking through the practical implications about how you start transitioning away from oil, coal, and gas and get it into nuclear, hydro, it's great to talk about, but when you think about other renewables, the two big buckets there are wind and solar. And although interesting and available in the world, they can't supply baseload power today. The battery technology is not quite there, and the power generation is not quite there. And so you have to go into hydro and nuclear. And hydro is great, but if you don't have a river or elevation, hydro is not really an option. And so therefore, nuclear is really goes to nuclear. That's your only option. If you're sitting in the Midwest U.S. somewhere, you don't have nuclear, you don't have very much wind, and you're looking to get away from coal or oil, nuclear is your only option. So two big things. One is all energy will grow at the GDP of the world, 2-3%. But as well, I think nuclear has to take more than its pro rata going forward. So that 10% has got to go up to something more material if we want to get anywhere close to these net zero goals that the world has. In terms of our projects, again, two projects, one in Nunavut, one in Labrador. On the left-hand side is called our project called Angelac. We just bought that this year from a company called Valor, 685 square kilometers. It has an existing historical resource of 43 million pounds at 0.69%. For people who are not familiar with 0.69% in terms of a grade, in terms of uranium, that's outside the Athabasca. That's the second highest grade to our knowledge globally, so very high grade. For those that think in sort of gold equivalent, at current metal prices, that's about an 18-gram equivalent gold deposit, if that helps the high-grade nature of it. This year we had an $8 million budget, which we'll go through, which was spent on 5,500 meters of drilling and a survey. And the deposit itself has some byproducts. Moly, copper, and silver makes up not quite 20% of the deposit, so fairly interesting when we get down the road. And over the right-hand side, or the eastern side of the country, our CNB project called Central Mineral Belt. Even larger land package, a little over 1,500 square kilometers with some historical resources at Mustang Lake and Enna Lake. This year we've had a $4 million budget there. And one of the interesting things we'll talk about is its IOCG potential, iron oxide, copper, gold, that the team is very excited about. In terms of corporate overview, a little over 200 million shares outstanding, some options, some warrants, all very good. The share price today around that 18-cent mark, so we're in the mid-30s of market cap Canadian dollars. And even after the budgets of $8 million and $4 million, which have largely been spent, we still have about $3 million left in the bank of hard dollars. So no great panic to go financing just yet. In terms of analyst coverage, yours truly, Dave, is our analyst. Very good at $1.35 target. I'm sure any questions you can just ask him. In terms of management and board, you can see the board, Phil Williams, executive chair. Phil and I worked together over 20 years ago. I was the banker, he was our uranium analyst, so we know each other quite well. Myself, Richard Patricio, CEO of Mega, 20 plus years in the industry, very good. Some people probably recognize Justin Reed, although CEO of Troilus, which is a gold company today. He was the uranium analyst back at a firm called Cormark back in the last boom. Bridget, in terms of the financial side, and with the Valor transaction, Jim and Rob came to us. And interestingly, Rob actually worked at the project a long time ago. And some of the reports, both of the project and of the regional geology produced by the territory, actually he's one of the co-authors. So a great resource for us. Greg's our CFO, very good with the flow through and the financial, that's very good. And Nancy is our VPX, 15 years in the industry. She's worked both in Nunavut, she worked at Kigavik, back when it was called Arriva, now called Orano, and the rest of the team there is headed in St. John's. Focusing in on the project itself, you can see it's in southern Nunavut. If you continued a little south, you'd actually hit northern Saskatchewan and the Athabasca Basin. So we're in the south part of there. You can see the picture on the left-hand side. That's obviously in summer. That probably looks like that maybe 3 or 4 months out of the year. The other 6 or 7 months of the year, it's snow-covered. It gets cold there, obviously. And our friends at Agnico have done us a great service by showing that you can operate profitably and year-round. They have the 3 big mines there. Makes up something in the order of about a quarter of their NAV, so it's their material assets for Agnico, Meliadine, Meadowbank, and Hope Bay. And interestingly, the town of Baker Lake, which is our local community, First Nations, is the same First Nations community at Meadowbank, and so it's been in production for about 10 years. So all the usual things that you would have to go through in terms of mining, dust from roads, caribou migration patterns, things like that. That's been a path that's already been went over with Agnico. So that'll help our permitting process as we go through that. In terms of the property itself, reasonably big, 40 kilometers by 20 kilometers approximately. You can see all the prospectivity there. You see those yellow squiggles, that's where the existing resource is. And although the property is very prospective and lots of things to follow up and lots of smoky hits, our focus over this year and next year is just going to be on the far right there, which we call the LAC 50 trend, which is where the existing resource is and what we call B. And when you add up the little trend there called A, B, and C, it's about 15 kilometers long by about 3 kilometers wide. So fairly big package there just for that. We think that at least for this year and next year, that's we can solely concentrate there and not easily not run out of targets. When we look at the existing resource, you can see the numbers, you can see the moly grades, the copper and the silver, and the bottom picture is sort of a modified long section, as if you're looking into the deposit. It starts at surface, goes down 300 meters. The warmer colors are better. Red is obviously over 1%, but what it does, it gives you an idea for grade distribution, and it gives you an idea of how you might be able to mine this thing. This is just a traditional hard rock deposit. This has none of the associated mining issues that the Athabasca might have, and so you don't need to be a uranium expert. You don't even really need to be a mining expert. The deposit kind of looks like a book on its end, starting from surface, kind of looks like this. And so there's lots of analogies over the world, across geographies, about how you would typically mine that when we get there. When we look at how we find the uranium, we start off with VLFEM, stands for very low frequency electromagnetics. It gets flown with a plane. It lights up these conductors, and then we have to do some soil sampling where the soils and the enzyme leach overlap with the conductors. That's typically where we find the uranium. You see on the bottom there, the purple stuff is where the purple blobs are the existing resource. You can see the red or magenta are in terms of the resource expansion targets, both along strike and offset. We focused on you can see in the picture in the top right, we focused only on the main zone, which is one of the 4 zones. 3 big takeaways from our drilling this year, 18 holes, 3 things of material note. One is we found a potential new lens in holes 4, 6, and 8. You can see that in the green blob. And on the eastern side or the right-hand side of the picture, basically filling in some gaps in terms of increasing the resource. The best hit we had there was 7.5% over 1.6 meters, which is fairly exciting. We'll show you a cross-section of how that links up in a second. And our second batch of assays, which should be out in about a month's time, focus on the left-hand side or the west side of the zone, which are very interesting as well. This is our hole 5 that returned the 7.5%. You can see it at the very bottom there, and then you can see the blue holes or the blue stars, which line up the historical mineralization. So it's a fairly good picture of how you can see that we're extending the mineralization at depth. Again, this is not very deep. This is still within about 250 meters down, so all theoretically within open pittable mining scenario when we get there. This is hole 4, 6, and 8. This is our new lens. You see the blue stars are the historic drilling or the footwall. What we think we found in holes 6 and 8, and 4 is outstanding, is the hanging wall mineralization. You can see multiple hits. You can see all the grades there. You can look at the press release of today for all the details. If you're geologically inclined, we've given all the information. You can actually remodel it. You can remodel it yourself. In terms of a geological analog, for the geologists in the room, it's what's called a Beaver Lodge type uranium deposit, which basically just means, I'm sure Dave, I'll butcher the geology, but high grade, narrow vein in a hard rock deposit. That's simply what it is. Typically they have associated base metals, which we have, and there's, before the Athabasca Basin was discovered, there's many examples in early Saskatchewan in the 50s and 60s. Initial metallurgy was good. All the impurities on the right, there's none of them, so we won't get dinged economically. In terms of the yellow cake we produced, that bin there, about 70%. And you can see our leach recovery curves on the bottom left, about 95% recovery in the first 48 hours, so excellent leach kinetics. So more work to do, but up at the start, nothing to be concerned about. In terms of ore sorting, this will be down the road, but very interesting. You can see the rock coming into one of these little ore sorters. Tomra did the study. Most mining operations have these. The rock comes in. The little scintillometer tries to pick out what's ore and what's waste. It's saying you can get rid of 50% of the waste and only lose 3% of the ore. And at its extreme, you can get rid of 84% of the waste and only lose 6% of the ore. Again, we have more work to do here, but if this is anywhere remotely true, you can imagine what it will do to the ultimate economics of the deposit. In terms of our CNB project in Labrador, very large land package, 125 kilometers long. You can see our Mustang Lake and Anna Lake. You can see on the right-hand side the Michelin deposit, which is owned by Paladin, and our Mustang Lake property, which is just north of there. The 2 things we're doing there this year are, one, we're doing geophysics at Mustang Lake, which we can see here, that little purple dot. Again, looking for drill targets. That's on strike from Michelin, and we'll see what that produces. And we're doing an airborne gravity gradiometric survey, we call it AGG, over the entire property. You can appreciate it's a fairly large land package, and what we're looking for here is 2 things. One is uranium that we currently don't know about, and also the potential for ISOG, which will show up in any gravity survey. So that should be out. Mustang Lake should be out fairly soon, within sort of measured in weeks, and the larger survey there will be out towards the end of the year. So in summary, in terms of strategic focus, Angelac is really our lead project in terms of bang for a buck. In the short term, we want to grow the mineralization. In the more medium, longer term, we'll obviously start to demonstrate the district scale potential. And at the CNB in Labrador, we were going to look for some more uranium targets and evaluate the ISCG potential. That'll be towards the end of the year. And the programs are done. The results are coming in. The 3 big things we have coming in before year end are the last of the assays for Angelac, and then we have, secondly, we have the Mustang Lake geophysics coming, and then we have the larger airborne survey coming in for the CNB towards the end of the year. So we think we're undervalued, and we want to look. And if you like uranium, look at our value relative to what we have, and we think it's compelling.